Right, let's go back now then to page 13, recommendations from the Maori Committee. Mr. Mohi, do you wish to perhaps lead us into that discussion? Thank you.
Yeah, I'll just lead you in by saying that I think it's all laid out fairly clearly, so nothing to say.
Any questions? Fix up the... Oh, fix them up. I'm sure you could, Councillor Barker. Someone happy to take us to the recommendations then? There's no discussion, no questions. You're happy to move, Councillor Scott? We have a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Barker. Do you wish to speak? You wish to speak, Councillor Barker? Everyone happy? I'll put the motion then. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary, no. Carried. Thank you. Recommendations from the Regional Planning Committee. We were all there at that one. I don't really have anything to add to that other than there were some good suggestions made about team building, etc., which I thought were timely, and I've still got big faith in that committee delivering good things for Hawke's Bay. So, well, anyone, no other questions there? Someone happy to move? You've got a question?
My question might actually need to note another point on the recommendation, and that is we've agreed to, we're looking at amending the terms of reference, but we actually need to see those terms of reference and how they're going to be amended, because we still actually have to clarify some issues around the circular nature of some of the aspects and the linear nature of others, i.e. that if it's a plan change, Mr. Chairman, my understanding, and perhaps Mr. Maxwell can clarify this, all matters relating to a plan change, if we don't approve those in council, have to go back to the committee. But for papers that are merely background papers, information papers, etc., then whether or not the 80% is the recommendation back to council is a linear one. Is that not correct? Or perhaps Ms. Codlin is in a better position to answer that.
Very good
so
timing.
I'm just querying whether we actually need to see a revised terms of reference in adopting the amendments.
I think the draft or revised terms of reference will be brought back to the Regional Planning Committee. In terms of the referral back to the committee from a council decision that relates to any proposed plan change specifically. So it's only really you recommending for a notification of a plan change, so that's where that provision relates to. All others can actually be considered by the council, but certainly back to the RPC in May for final endorsement at the May council meeting of the terms of reference.
Councillor Graham.
Chair, I had that suggestion that we do team building. You alluded to it. A team suggestion to the entire committee that we have a team building exercise, and I sort of thought that the best way to do that was a retreat. This is a really important committee, probably one of the most important ones we deal with, and a lot of the people around the table are inexperienced, including some of the councillors, and we don't know each other that well. Some of us know a bit better than others, but mostly we don't. And I think we're culturally very different, and that's evident at the meetings. I would certainly value the opportunity to sit around in a more relaxed view, just the councillors and the Māori members, and just get their views and just hear it out in a more social and relaxed way, and say what do they want, what do they think they want to achieve out of here, out of this deal. And what are their aspirations? So I'd just like to put that on the table to the councillors to think about.
Right, there were hands up for questions. Mr. Mohi.
Just in terms of the iwi hapu management plans, on page 16, number 11, when it says there that if the relevant iwi authority has acknowledged the plan, I'm just wondering, at the meeting, the Tangi 2 representative, Tania, outlined who those relevant iwi authorities are. And if we could actually have that, because otherwise there is the perception that there's one iwi authority. And in this terms, I recall her outlining the 5 or 6 recognised iwi authorities for this. I'm just wondering if an extra sentence could be added to that, outlining who those authorities were.
Actually, I can't recall that, but certainly the Maori Committee asked us to develop that list of iwi authorities, so I think we'll bring that back to the RPC just to confirm and go through that process.
Yep, that would be fine.
I agree, if they're not captured here, as long as they're captured, yeah, very good. Okay, any other questions?
And just in terms of the retreat, I think that's a good idea from council. He could perhaps donate a pig.
Councillor Graham, the TA's retreat, we advance. Any other questions? Someone happy to take us to the recommendations then? Councillor Scott?
Mr. Chairman,
What?
but I would like to add something.
Let's hear what that says first.
Under under 3, amends the revised terms of reference with the proposed amended terms of reference to be brought back to the RPC for approval.
Okay. Everything else is okay though?
Just adding that version that is.
To be clearer about how we deal with it. Very good. Do we have a seconder for that? Someone happy to second that? Yeah, thank you, Councillor Bevan. You wish to speak, Councillor Scott?
Mr. Chairman, I think that the proposal of expanding the information that is received by the committee will be a very helpful way of seeing that every member is equally informed on that committee and enhance the decision making at both council, around the council table and around the RPC. So I'm very pleased to see that development.
Thank you, Councillor Bevan. You're fine. Other speakers? Put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. To the contrary, no. Carried. Let's move along to item 10 on page 17. Recommendations from corporate and strategic committees, should be, plural, two
Thank you.
meetings. Yeah.
Corporate and strategic have had a busy month. I'll start with the 11th of February meeting. One of the key items on our agenda was the establishment of a finance, audit and risk subcommittee of the Corporate and Strategic Committee. This was a rather robustly discussed topic. The amended terms of reference for both committees are in place as attachments 1 and 2. We also had a number of reports received, Business Hawke's Bay Tourism, and a notable one was from the Cranford Foundation Trust. That was quite a wonderful presentation, spearheaded by John Buck, and this is a new foundation that's been established with the aim of building a new palliative care residence and ascertaining ongoing funding for the benefit of the Hawke's Bay community. The key point they made was that we share the same boundaries as the Regional Council and the Cranford Trust, and so they're seeking an initial partnership. There was no mention of funding contribution at this point in time, but the commitment was there that our chairman was to join the Cranford Trust for ongoing discussions. It was a very well received discussion and one or two teary eyes in the room by the end of the presentation. We then moved on to the 18th of February, where we had a Napier Gisborne Rail update. This was supposed to be a business case report, but it was absent of financials. The NGR group, Napier Gisborne Rail Group, have encountered some difficulties in ascertaining enough information from Kiwi Rail over the ensuing holiday period. So the outcome of that meeting was that we would request a deadline extension to the 30th of June 2015. the Chief Executive was instructed to continue ongoing resourcing with a caveat from within the present budget allocation. And the recommendation as it evolved called for two things that I thought were particularly pertinent. Well, the first was the ongoing support for the NGR, but that all options for reopening of the railway line in the interim were to be considered, which I think was quite a game changer in terms of where our discussions have been to date. And the chairman was also authorised to have ongoing discussions with our investment company and other interested parties, primarily our Port of Napier, key logistics provider within the region. So overall, we've had a pretty steady month, and I'm happy to take any questions.
It's a week since that meeting on NGR took place. I'm wondering if there's any updated information on the continuing conversation with Kiwi Rail.
I wrote the Chief Executive a letter the end of last week, but he got it via email, and we've been playing phone tag ever since. The latest update is he wishes to come to the Bay and meet with me and see how this goes forward. So
does that mean that they're open to extending the deadline past 1 March?
we haven't got that far, but he's clear on our recommendations, yeah, and where we thought that went. But the indication is we're interested in starting if you like, a formal negotiation around the lease of the line. And my view is that was the trigger. It's not about the end of it, but by the 1st of March we had to decide whether we were interested in leasing or not, and we've indicated we are. So as I say, phone tag, 2 or 3 calls each way. We haven't quite nailed it yet, but we'll get there. So I'll keep council up to speed on that. And the only other comment I'd make in here is I haven't met with the Cranford team yet. I wanted to wait till we got through this final resolution, and then I'll set that up. So.
Happy to move the recommendations.
Happy to move. Okay. Seconder, Dave. Councillor Pipe, happy to second. You wish to speak? Other speakers? Councillor Dick.
I'd just like to make the point that, and thanks for your update on the rail situation, and I know that you're doing your utmost to get to talk to Mr. Reedy, and the intention that he should come down here, I think it's a very good idea. But we've got to keep the foot on the accelerator on this, because there's still a lot to be done. So those people who were working for us, Mr. Cornwall, Mr. Buchanan, and Mr. Who was it that presented last week?
Underwood.
Stephen Underwood, who I found very impressive. I believe need to get on with their task. Is that the understanding? Is that your understanding? Yeah, good.
Okay, no other speakers. I'll put that motion in. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Contrary, no. Carried. We've got a few minutes before morning 2. HBRC cannot be here before 10:30. The Tugituk catchment may take a little longer than 10 minutes. Maybe we go to the monthly work plan. Can we deal with that without the Chief Executive, guys? Yeah, okay. So let's go to 47. Questions? Just a question to Mr. Maxwell. The Waido River mouth blocked recently, and there was a lot of traffic on Facebook and other things sort of giving us a bit of a touch-up over lack of information, etc. But then we discovered that, well, I subsequently brought it up with the Chief Executive on Monday morning to see how we weren't very clear on what we'd done, but it turned out it wasn't us, it was the Waido District Council who decided that even though the bacterial levels were low, it would be prudent to close the river from fishing and contact recreation, just as a very well publicised raft race commenced on the Saturday morning. So that's hence the consternation, etc. The question I have is, can we somehow get the teams together and be a bit cleverer in how we deal with this stuff going forward. Now, I know you, Mr. Maxwell, probably surprised by all this as well, because there was no alert that bacterial levels had reached an unacceptable level, and to be fair to WDC, it was probably quite prudent that it happened, but it just seemed there was quite a disconnect between the agencies.
Sure, and yes, you're correct. So that we had no indication there was an issue. Our monitoring, which is fairly intensive at this time of the year, hadn't indicated there was an issue to address. The river mouth opening would be normally managed out of Mr. Adie's group, and we have a very long-standing agreement and relationship and process with the District Health Board that where there is an issue that is likely to affect public health, we notify them, and then as the agency responsible for public health matters, they would make the determination on closures or signage or whatever other action was required. So we were, yes, very surprised that Wairau District had chosen to take that action, and I think you're right, it's probably a case of just having catch up with them and just clarifying the process that we've got in place so that one party isn't surprised by the actions of another.
And for the record, the Mayor of Wairau did suggest I go down there with a shovel myself and clear a path. No, I declined. The good old days. Councillor Scott.
I've got a couple of queries, if I may, Mr. Chairman. One relates to the webcam that's being used on Lake Tutera. Can you tell us what the purpose of this is for? I know of the research that's going on into the lake quality, but is it to assist?
Yes, my understanding or recollection of the discussion is that it's to assist with the relationship between what we're seeing out of the monitoring buoy and the appearance of the algal blooms.
Yep.
So it goes to that.
Just a question from, oh, sorry, unless the hands are up. Sorry, Councillor Balpin.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, I could get one of the minor items off the table if I question these two folks while they're here, Ian and Helen, and that was the cows and the tuki-tuki. I'm regularly sent photos like this by folks who live downstream of the Red Bridge, who are complaining about cows in the river, and now in fact they're coming across and coming up the bank on the other side. Could you just explain to me what, under the new plan change, what is the restriction on this? Because I get every other day photos from these folks complaining about this.
So under the rules in the Toki Plan Change 6, stock exclusion kicks in 2018. For a catchment like that, and it's based on slope, so there would be an expectation that stock will be excluded from the river, so that wouldn't be acceptable after 2018, June 2018.
Circulated last time. Focus is photo, it just gets recirculated.
X number of days and X months of the year.
Yep, there is a section relating to where streams are permanently fenced off, and there is a need for weed management within that area. We have provided for two short periods of grazing to manage the weeds and to control that.
So these folks need to live with this for 3 more years.
Question. Would it be possible, it's a bit of a preamble, there's a general public concern about stock watering to rivers for good reason. And I know that we have access to powers to eventually exclude them. But my question is it possible for the regional council to go to the landowners and ask them to take reasonable and necessary steps to exclude the stock from the river, and be clear to them that it's not a compulsory thing, but it's simply a request?
So I'll perhaps jump in there. You're absolutely right. So there are currently some rules in the plan around stock and impacts on water. So my suggestion would be for those people who have concerns would be to contact our pollution hotline and complain about it. We are as a group, are very happy to work with those situations and the landowner to try and get them over the line, even if there may not be a breach of the current rules as they sit. A little bit of education about what the future might look like may encourage them to take action early, and we usually do that in conjunction with the land management team, who have a good relationship with these guys anyway. So I'd encourage those people to perhaps contact us directly, and we'll seek every endeavour to deal with it if we have the ability to talk to landowners and say, hey, reasonably, can we deal with this in a better way? And in most cases, they're more than willing.
My question is, why do we need to wait for people to ring and have a complaints on the land line, on the complaint line? Why can't we, council staff, at their own initiative, react to an issue which has been brought up on a number of occasions, simply approach the landowner and say, we know that it's not a requirement for you to fence, but in the interest of public goodwill and being a good corporate citizen in this community, would you be able to fence your property off, stop the stock?
Yep.
Why couldn't we just make that request ourselves?
We absolutely could do, and I guess in this situation below Red Bridge, if this is something that's perennial and we deal with all the time, you're right. What I was thinking about more was also there are other situations beyond this where we're not aware of it. Let us know effectively that there is a problem.
This is the Great Bridge.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the one that's been around for the last 20 years. So it's a reasonably tough nut to crack. There needs to be. That has happened. That has happened on a number of occasions. It's kind of a difficult conversation just at the moment.
Not landowners you're talking about. Just while you're running hot, Councillor Balfour, there's nowhere you can tie your bottled water question into here. So will you while you're looking for that, I'll come over here to.
Query on the paper, Mr. Chairman, that relates to on page 50 to the under strategic development at the very bottom to the energy futures. So I think that's my query is to Ms. Codlin. The staff are reviewing a stakeholder management tool, which is good to know the process is underway. But have we got any indicative timetable? When are we going to hear something about? I'm not asking by next meeting or something, but if you could just give us a little bit of an indication of the progress on this and what the next steps are.
Tom Skerman's been, I've passed this on to him to sort of follow through. He's received proposals from two parties around looking at a bit of a profiling of Hawke's Bay, a literature review of the issues around energy use and oil and gas. Councillor Balfour has been involved with the discussions with Tom on that. The time frame associated with that is that perhaps if we can get it underway, April, May, we might be able to have a small workshop to look at a way forward in terms of community engagement. So it's that sort of time frame that we're looking at. Yeah, the community engagement tool, that was really just a comment that one of the organisations that Tom had spoken to was using this cloud-based community engagement tool. So it's just another one of those things that are around. So it's just of interest to examine. So there's no real intention necessary to go down that track.
Thank you, Councillor Pipe.
Yeah, I just want to go back to what we were talking about, or Councillor Balfour was talking about before. It's just in the on page 49. Maybe Ian, you can help me out here. The fecal source tracking that's been undertaken in the Clive and Parongaho estuaries. Any surprises there? I know you're going to be reporting it to us, but was there any surprises with that?
There are some sources that have been identified in the recent round of fecal source tracking, and I understand or recall that the team are going back out again to take another sample to reconfirm it. So I don't know, what the source is at this point.
Okay.
I don't recall, but certainly that'll be brought back to you in the report.
Just a couple of other points. The PM10 monitoring at Port Ahuriri School, is that a new site for us?
Yes, correct.
It is. And the last one, the wetland assessment training workshop that is going to be run in March. What does that involve, and who is involved in that?
It involves a lady from Landcare Research who is coming to work with the staff to basically develop a template or a protocol, if you like, for wetland condition assessment, so that we have everybody comparing apples with apples. So we have a consistent view of the type and the quality of wetlands, rather than relying on current levels of experience or understanding. We want to sort of set a consistent framework and approach, so that as people go into the field and make these assessments, we can compare one with the other, if you like.
Yeah. And one final question through you, Mr. Chair. It's just more my personal interest. The internationally rare frost flats ecosystems being surveyed. Can you just I'm not too sure what these frost flats are and why they're rare and where are they?
So I can't tell you, because otherwise everyone will want to go up there and look at them.
Is that right?
No.
Come on, give me
No,
that.
but seriously,
It must be.
it's pretty close to it, actually. The frost flats are up in the central plateau towards Taupo, off the Taupo Highway. It's an area of flat land, basically, that cold air accumulates in, and you can have almost permanent frost. So it's sort of around the Lochinvar station, that's that sort of area as you come out of the Waipunga Valley and drop into the flats heading towards Taupo. It's the land that's covered in that short scrubby turpentine bush. Yeah.
I sort of presumed that would be it, but I wondered whether they were any more closer to us than out that way. Thank you.
Councillor Belford.
Yes, I have found a hook for my minor item business. There's a reference to the next tank group meeting being 10th of March. And also on page 49, a reference to the development of the Haratanga Plains model continues, which I assume is a hydrological model. So the question is, given some news reporting lately, there seems to be a lot of confusion as to the status of these consents that are permitting bottling and who, in fact, even grants them, with some people now perceiving that it must be Napier City Council that is doing that for us. So have we approved, have any of these consents been approved since this council was elected?
So, yeah, I apologise. I was going to give you a fulsome email that gave all this clarification, and I will do anyway after this. But there has been the more recent article that was in the Hawke's Bay today certainly gave the indication the Napier City Council had consented water bottling. They may well have consented the land use part of it, where the factory is and how it operates and vehicle access. So that
Right.
certainly has happened. That operation is carrying out their activity under an existing consent, one that was granted in 2010 and then reviewed in 2012 to increase the volume.
Mm-hmm.
So that they have water, they just needed the land use planning
Right.
elements from Napier City Council. The other one, which is the Elwood Road one, that's the one that they had an existing consent. They came to us to increase the volume of consent. We had asked them to go away and do a further assessment on their activity effects on neighbouring bores. They did that and came back with sufficient information to allow us to grant the consent. So
And when did that all happen?
that was about the 12th of February, I think, was when the consent was issued. I can't remember exactly the date, but it was this month.
So in
But-
our
but
in our
sorry.
term. in our
Yeah,
term.
but and certainly in your term, but certainly they had come to us towards the end of last year with a request or an application to increase their volume. We had said no at that point and required further information, so we'd sent them away seeking further technical information, which they subsequently have compiled and provided to our satisfaction, and then we've issued the consent after that.
Well, I would just then indicate that at the tank meeting, I think you can expect, from what I've heard from growers and what have you, that the issue is going to be raised by members of the tank group as to how is all this happening at a point in time when, in theory, we're supposed to be trying to understand what the actual hydrology of the aquifer is and what kind of abstractions are sustainable or not, and maybe even eventually what the highest uses of the land of the water that is extracted ought to be. So there are a lot of issues that a lot of people think are being more kind of rationally explored. And I think there might be a bit of an eruption on March 10th.
Sure. And so just to be clear, of course, that currently we don't have the ability to, I know there were calls for moratoria, we don't have that ability. Consent's lodged with us, we have to process it. And under the current plan, that application was managed and dealt with. We looked at effects, including issues of sustainability. The key issue out there is two key issues. One is impacts on neighbouring bores, so they shouldn't impact existing lawful activities, and saltwater intrusion. Will this in time result in saltwater intrusion? And neither of those were an issue in this case. But certainly appreciate that there is a broader water management discussion on the go, but unfortunately doesn't stop us having to deal with the day-to-day people turning up looking for water in the interim.
So if I can just have a follow-on question to Ian about this. Correct me if I'm wrong, Ian, but as I understand it, once a proposed consent holder, in this case the people on Elwood Road, demonstrate that more water is available, which is what they must have done, then we have no power to say no to them because because the water is consented on a first come first served basis. Is that correct?
So what they had, the issues that we would have looked at in that application are around, as I've described earlier, effects on neighbouring bores and effects on, or potential for saltwater intrusion, those sorts of issues. The other one that might have come into play, depending on its location, is impact on nearby springs, rivers, lakes, wetlands. So is it going to have a stream depletion effect? And in this case, no, it wouldn't. So given that it passed all those thresholds, it is very much a first come, first served. There is no allocation per se for that area. So provided they meet those tests I described earlier, there is no other reason why we would decline consent.
Okay, so this is excited